right, yeah. Thanks all for coming. I'm Martin Köppelmann, founder of Gnosis, building since 10 years more than 10 years in the Ethereum and blockchain space. With Gnosis we did things like Gnosis Safe, CowSwap, but now Gnosis Chain and many other projects. But today's talk will be about frankly my favorite project, or the project that kind of brought me into the space, and it's called Circles, and it raises the big question of how does money work, and how can we create potentially or a new version of money or different version of money that maybe works better. And of course we need to start with the observation what money actually is. And it's surprising that it is something so dominant in our lives, so kind of money plays such a big role, but I think we think relatively little about how money works, where money comes from, and how money is designed. So a quote I often start with from Bernard Lietaer, defining money primarily as an agreement. So primarily money is a social construct, and as such, of course, it's not a God-given thing. It is something constructed by humans, and it is, and therefore it can also be changed by humans, the way we can design it. Another way to put the same thing is to say money is technology, and in fact, it's actually probably the most widespread piece of technology, or also kind of, you can also think of it as a communication instrument. So you can go into another country, you don't speak the language, you don't speak, you don't understand the culture, but probably still everyone kind of understands money or reacts to money. There are very, very, very few places on Earth where people don't use money. But now, money on its surface might look neutral. It might look like, from a day-to-day experience, you might think, okay, I need to get money, earn money, and then I can spend money. Okay, that seems simple. Are there really any parameters? But the really critical part, if you look at any particular money, is where does it originally come from? So how does the process of money creation look like? Who controls that, and what are the rules for that? And if you then go down this rabbit hole, that is really where a lot of power lies, where a lot of things of how our society works are dominated, frankly, by this process of how does money come into creation. So the promise is we can potentially do things better than they used to be, and frankly, in the last years, it seems like some people are sufficient with the goal of blockchain to say, okay, let's now have more efficient ways to spread the US dollar across the world, and that's at least not why I joined the space very initially. So I do think we can do more radical things, like not just upgrading existing money to a new tech platform, but actually working on money at its core itself. So obviously Bitcoin was kind of the first project that even also for me raised this question, or suddenly there was this thing in the world that kind of presented an alternative. And I have to admit, 13, 14 years ago, I was also kind of a Bitcoin maxi, was running around, was telling everyone they should use Bitcoin. But then I would say Bitcoin is maybe, I'm happy that Bitcoin exists, but I think it's not really playing a role of money. Bitcoin is not used as a medium of exchange, or rarely used as a medium of exchange, almost never used as a unit of account. And kind of the other thing was, so I was early in Bitcoin, and of course, and I was one of them running around telling people use Bitcoin. But at some point, I've had the feeling, would it really benefit the world? So right now, I think 1 or 2% of the world population hold Bitcoin. Would it really benefit the other 98, 99% if the whole world would run on Bitcoin? And my conclusion was, it's not clear, and probably not. It would certainly benefit the first 1 or 2% that already hold Bitcoin. So in that sense, I at least lost this ambition to preach people about Bitcoin, because again, I felt like it's not necessarily in their interest or in the long term, or that's not necessarily a good form of money long term. And again, to me, the core thing is Bitcoin is maybe an alternative to gold. It's not an alternative to the fiat currencies we are using. No one is using it as no one is denominating their contracts in it. No one is denominating salary in it. No one is pricing goods in it. So the topic of this talk is, how can we design money from scratch using similar technologies? Of course, we have the blockchain and so on. Let's start with a thought experiment. Let's start, maybe we are roughly almost 100 people in this room. So let's say we somehow ended up on an island. We somehow stranded on an island, and it's just us. And somehow we ended up there, and we might decide, okay, actually money would be a useful thing to have. We don't have any because we somehow ended here up. How do we create it? What do we do? What would be kind of reasonable? What would be reasonable approaches? So the first approach might be to say, okay, let's say everyone from us gets, there's a one-time event where everyone gets initial 1,000 units, and then 100 people, then 100,000 units are in circulation. Then kind of this money creation thing is over. And then kind of just the money can flow across of us. But then let's say some of us leave this island already after 2 weeks, and others stay for a long time. Was it then really a good choice to give those that leave very early kind of that same amount, and kind of let's say at some point others come to this island, would they also get then the 1,000 units? So the next approach would be to say, okay, we do it time-based. So it's still kind of the same idea. We do it per person, but instead of doing it at one time, one amount, we do it time-based. So we do 1 unit per hour that we can issue to every person kind of involved in the scheme. So now the issue with that approach, or with that approach alone, is that at least over a long period of time, the total supply of money in circulation will just kind of continue to grow, while this newly issued kind of still 1 unit per person will be fixed. So kind of here are time scales that after a long time, the total amount of money in circulation per person, will go towards infinity. So the relative amount of 1 unit will go towards 0. So that comes, there the conclusion is, okay, what if old money would kind of disappear? And there's one term called demurrage, but you can also just say old money rots or is burned or whatnot. But essentially, the idea is, okay, money from maybe centuries ago shouldn't matter today anymore. It kind of that should be discounted, or at least there should be some factor with how old money is discounted. And here we see the same graphs as above, but we just see that here the total amount of money per person will always stabilize, no matter whether there's a big increase or decrease in population. So now the next question is, in our hypothetical idea of this island of 100 people, we could easily figure out who the participating people are. But of course, in reality, it's much more complex. So then the question is, if you want to do this per person issuance, of course, the big question is who decides, or who do you need to ask to kind of be allowed to issue money? And the answer we are giving in Circles is everyone is allowed to issue money, and we don't even kind of ask who you are, or there is no one to ask who you are, because you yourself can just start to issue money. The important part is that there is this, what we call this web of trust-based system where people can decide whose money they accept, who is kind of a valid issuer, and that is essentially that task or that role is decentralized, and we will look into this in more detail. So conclusion: everyone can issue money, but we can. It's everyone individual's decision whose money they accept. So in short, yes, there might be fake and Sybil accounts in the system, but as long as you don't decide to accept their money, then it does not affect you negatively. So we can look into that into more detail. So we have here 3 people, A, B, and C. All of them are issuing their own money. A is issuing A money at this rate of one unit per hour. But it's different tokens, so kind of it's different. It's different. Let's just call it here A circles. And B issues B circles, and C issues C circles. Now, A wants to pay person C, but C does not know or trust, how we call it, person A. But there is a connection via B. So A and B trust each other, B and C trust each other, and now we see here the balances of those 3 people. So now we can do what we call a transitive transfer, where A is sending 100 of her circles to person B, and B is fine with that because they trust A and they accept her circles. And then, without B necessarily needing to be involved, B circles are forwarded to C, and C is happy with that because they receive circles from a person, or they receive circles that are issued by a person that they trust. So in aggregate, those balance changes occur. For B, the total balance doesn't change. They got 100. They forwarded another type of circles, but also 100. So in total, balance didn't change. But A ultimately sent 100 circles to C. This is already kind of one step into the present. So this is how things look. How things look in the app that we have for circles, but the point I'm trying to make here is you see a total balance here of 37,000 circles. But then if you click on it, you actually see that is a mix of different circles issued by the different people you have in your trust network. So in summary, the 3 rules of circles are just those. So we have a constant issuance, or all circles or all money in the circle system comes into existence through people. So people need or can create those circles at a rate of 1 per hour. Then there is a counterforce that at all times, and no matter where the circles are, all the circles are constantly being reduced at a rate of 7%. And we will see in the next slide how those 2 forces counteract each other and lead to a stable overall supply. And the third rule is this trust system, what we call here selective trust. This is here just the graph of the result of the first 2 rules, constant issuance. So this is kind of the amount of circles a single person issues over a lifetime of, let's say, 80 years. So they start to issue at year 0. They issue constantly, or they always issue constantly, but but the old circuits that are already then in supply and that are somewhere in the network, they are hit by this, constantly hit by the 7% demurrage. So at some point, those two forces, the constant issuance and the demurrage, equal out. And here, hypothetically, after 80 years, this person dies, stops to issue personal circles. Then the circles, the money they have brought into existence still is around in societies, can still be held by people. But over time, because of the 7% demurrage, it will kind of disappear from the system. So magic number here is in circles, it will always converge towards 120,000. 804 circles times the number of people in the system. And maybe to tie that back to this earlier observation that Bitcoin is not really used as a medium of exchange, but specifically not as a unit of account. My intuition for that is that in Bitcoin there is a completely fixed issuance policy that is completely independent of how many people are using Bitcoin, and therefore, of course, it will always be it will be significantly volatile, because if more people decide to use it, then of course, price goes up. If less people decide to use it, or if it becomes more niche, kind of price would go down, and that, I think, makes it hard, maybe impossible, to use it as a for long-term contracts to have your salary denominated in Bitcoin and so on. So on the other hand, you have systems that try to be value stable and try to say, okay, the amount of money that is in the system needs to correlate with the economy, or with the size of the economy. But that, of course, always introduces some central point of power. And Circles tries to find a middle ground where it says the size of the economy is approximated by the number of people in that economy, by the number of people using it. And so in that sense, Circles is reacting to the size of the economy, but still in a way that there is no a central point of power that can do arbitrary rules and kind of also be this single point of failure potentially. Just one more perspective on those on this 120,000. So in Circles, you can, of course, hold more, or I mean, it's not limited how much Circles you hold. You can hold more than 120,000. But from an individual perspective, you can look at the system, or you can look at the 7% as a tax. If, for example, if you are not issuing money, then you would kind of just constantly pay a tax on the 7% tax, which is kind of similar to what inflation does in euros and dollars. But anyhow, so if you exactly have those 120,000 as a balance, then those two forces equal out, and your effective tax rate, let's say, is 0. If you have less than that, your effective tax rate is negative, so you get more than which is burned or taken from the demurrage, while if you have more, then your tax rate approaches the 7%. Okay, so Circles, as an idea, already goes back all the way to DEFCON 1 in London almost 10 years ago. I already presented the idea of Circles, and then it took quite some years, and in 2020 it actually launched in version 1. And this is kind of how this trust network then formed. So this was after 1 day, this was after 2 days, and that was after a couple of weeks. So it went quite viral, and a huge network of over 100,000 people was formed in a very short amount of time. And also for some time, then there were local experiments. Here is an example of a farmer's market in Berlin, where you could buy this basket of the week for 450 circles. And here is how actually a transaction, kind of this ABC thing, then looked in reality, a bit more complex. So on the left side, that's me. On the right side, this is this vendor, Bauer Direct. And basically the blue points in between are people that this vendor then trusts, and this pathfinder would found a path for kind of essentially me making a payment to them via all those hops. So, but then at the same time, it's the same time. The truth is that Circles had this viral moment in 2020, and yes, there were some communities, small-scale communities, that tried it for quite a time, couple of years. But overall activity in the network, was low, or then kind of for a long time was very low. So recently we'd made, or in the last 1.5 years, we made a big, push or big upgrade, or basically we looked at Circles, and we still felt many ideas are valid, but we also felt, okay, there are a few pieces missing to make this system really relevant and successful in the real world. So in Circles 2.0, first, it is a continuation of the existing system. So everyone who had an account back then, all the balances, all the trust connections, all that, can be migrated. But we are making, essentially two big changes. One that I will talk about a bit more in the coming slides is the addition of groups. So kind of in Circles 1.0, it was purely this web of trust, this peer-to-peer web of trust, but groups or institutions wouldn't play a role in it. And yes, we do think that is important, and this also leads to being able to trade Circles and use it in more finance things, but I will go to it. And the other thing was simply Circles 1.0 was built in 2020. Blockchain technology was still absolutely not there. We already tried to do things like account abstraction, and for the time absolutely cutting edge things like gas abstraction and so on, but we had to build everything ourselves because infrastructure wouldn't exist. So long story short, big part of why Circles 1.0 did not go beyond this initial hype was that then it was simply not working on all kind of ends. There were some technical issues. Infrastructure was simply not ready. So the second part is maybe the even more important part compared to this addition of the groups is simply that we now have much better wallets. We have stable coins. We have solutions like this Gnosis Pay card. Just quick, I'm curious who has heard or maybe is even using Gnosis Pay. Great, perfect. So those things have made tremendous progress, and we will be able to connect Circles with those things. So soon you will be able to spend your Circles with Gnosis Pay, and therefore spend it at roughly 100 million merchants worldwide. So going a bit again into the abstract for what groups add is that Circles is this, in a way, ultra resilient system. So kind of you can have a very small group of people. You can have just a group of 4 or 5 people, and they can trust each other in Circles, and they can basically just within that group use Circles. And then whether people outside of that small trust group use Circles or not does not affect them at all, because if they don't trust, if they just trust each other, they are essentially just accepting their Circles, and within that group, those Circles might have a specific value, might be used for specific things, but what's happening somewhere else, again, doesn't affect them. So very resilient, not very efficient. So kind of the most efficient thing, on the other hand, would be to say, okay, we have just one currency for the whole world, and everyone is using that. That's the most efficient thing. But then again, most efficient thing, not very resilient. So if that system then in some form collapses, or there's doubt about it and so on, then kind of the damage is catastrophic and kind of even worse. So if you are using it in one part of the world, then suddenly problems or things that happen somewhere else affect you as well. So groups in the circle system allow to create more fungible versions of circles. So kind of instead of having really kind of per person a different currency, you can say everyone in this group, in this room could be added to a group, and now we can, so it's an optional thing, we can turn our very personal currencies that are all different into a shared group currency, one-to-one. So kind of I can put 10 of my personal circles into this group currency, and that no longer then depends solely on me and kind of on people trusting me as an issuer in circles. It then more depends on the trust in that group and kind of whether that group has useful rules of how you can join it. So again, it's also possible to stack groups. So you can have smaller groups, and you can have groups of groups, and you can go all the way if you really want to a world group to again find your trade-off space in this efficiency resilient trade-off. So concretely, that means looking again at a concrete circles balance, you can hold individual circles, but part of your balance might also be group circles if you decide to accept or trust those groups. And yeah, just because we are here at ECC, so there is, well, we have done an ECC group. If you already have circles, or if you want to join circles and join the group, there is a circles booth here outside, or just find someone from circles and you can be added to the ECC group. But this is how it looks like. So it's so on the top right you see the ECC logo, and all the blue dots or the blue profiles are those that are already members of this ECC group. All right, so two more kind of topics I want to touch on. One is one reaction I got from when telling people about circles, about this, well, as I describe it, radically fair approach of money, where everyone is individually their own issuer of money, and you can kind of do this mutual thing. I issue my money, you issue your money, and we mutually decide to say, okay, I accept yours, you accept mine. But there is no central entity, no one who gets I don't know, 10% pre-mine or kind of fee or whatnot. So this radically fair approach. One concern that people sometimes bring is, who is then driving that? So kind of if there's no investor or if there's no issuer, who's really driving the adoption of circles? So what we did is there are no fees or anything in the core protocol of circles, but we decided to be able to have some entities that are interested in spreading circles. We decided to have three kind of different fees or ways of how circles are distributed to different actors. So if you as a person mint your 1 circle per hour, 24 per day, then kind of the interface currently makes you pay a fee to 3 different entities, and one is the person that invited you to the network. The second one is one of the group, or the group you choose, or a group you choose. So kind of you can affiliate yourself with any group, and then you can choose to which group you pay a fee, but you will always, at least if you use this interface, pay a group to the fee. And the third fee is to the interface. And yeah, so again, the reasons is that I think for a long time in the crypto space, or at least in the early days of crypto, there was always this, there shouldn't be any fees or rent extraction and so on. But quite often the problem is if there is no fee, then it usually means, okay, there needs to be some form of investor that is financing the thing for a while and kind of then creating network effects. And later, when once they have captured the market or whatever, then they can turn on a fee. So we do think that it does make sense to have this fee early on, and importantly, make sure that different actors who play a role in the overall network kind of participate from those fees. Right, so the last topic I want to touch on is the tradability of circles. So I already hinted at a few things, that circles are all different. My circle is different than yours and so on, or everyone issues their own personal circles. But now, because of groups, it's much easier to make circles tradable. So previously, again, we would have technically 120,000 different circles, therefore 120,000 different prices, potentially different prices. Now we have a couple of concepts. So we have one concept we have is that you as a person, you can decide to what we call back your own circles. And essentially that means you're creating a small automated market maker with $100 worth of some collateral that you choose, can be Ether, Bitcoin, something like that, against your very own personal circles. And then we create a group of all the people that do that, and that's the circle's backer. And now that is already one source of liquidity. The groups can be other sources of liquidity, and I kind of just can try to give you an intuition for that. So all of those are highly connected. So kind of usually, let's say all those backers, they have their own kind of price in theory. But if they trust each other, if two people trust each other, and their prices of the two tokens diverge, then essentially there will be immediately arbitrage. Because if I trust a person and their circles are slightly less valuable than mine, but because I trust them, I basically say implicitly I am willing to accept their circles against mine one-to-one. It will then mean that kind of arbitrage will find an equilibrium price within groups that are highly connected. So if you have two groups where there's one group highly connected, and there's another group highly connected, and between those two groups are very few connections, it is possible that there will be a different price for circles here than there. But generally, we expect just a couple of different prices in the circles ecosystem. So here's just screenshot of how you can trade circles for different other currencies. And technically it can also be that only a subset of the circles you hold is at that very moment tradable, because essentially if you trade circles, you need to, for example, either have circles of one of those backers who directly provide liquidity, or have circles of people that are somehow then connected to people or groups that have liquidity. So groups are still in its early phases, and we are currently encouraging and working with different teams to create groups based on it can be like event-based, POAP-based, it can be identity-based, but it can of course also be based on existing local communities. And they can even have more complex rules for kind of how this minting or kind of conversion from personal to group tokens back and forth can go. So maybe then again my last slide before I open it up for questions. If you want to join, if you are interested in that, here's the QR code for Metri. That is the wallet we are using. If you go there, you will need an invite, or you will need at least one person who's already on the Circles network to trust you, to invite you, and you will find people here. Worst case, there is a Circles booth. You can find me, you can find people there. So you will find here people that can invite you. The other links just going deeper. So I'm closing my talk and opening it up for questions. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Because a friend of mine was developing that, have you looked into the concept of like index wallets? It's basically a concept of wallets where you have multiple currencies and you adjust the balance of the currencies, and then there's a kind of arbitration function between the utility to the receiver to the utility of the transmitter. So this might be interesting for circles to facilitate payments with multiple circles in my wallet, vendors' wishes in a way.
Yeah, no, sounds interesting. I have not heard of that, but I will look into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
I want to just say one more thing. So kind of tomorrow night at 5 p.m. there's also an evening event for Circle. So again, if you want to learn more, join us there. Thank you very much. It's on Luma. Yeah, you'll find it on Luma. All right.